Welcome back to the deep dive. So we've got an incredible stack of sources you sent us this week.
A really focused set.
Yeah, it's all spiritual counsel designed to help believers get ready for the new year, which the sources specifically call 2026.
Right.
And the counsel centers on achieving what the teachers call alignment across three, massive pillars: protection, favor, and overflow.
That's right. Our mission today is pretty straightforward. We're going to act as your guides through this material and really extract the specific keys these spiritual leaders are providing. They argue that the difference between entering a new season, preserved and favored, versus being exposed and struggling. It's not some cosmic game of chance.
Not luck.
Not at all. It is tied directly to what they call divine alignment.
And this is really where we have to start, because the sources identify this crucial pitfall right out of the gate.
They do.
So many people approach the new year with this passive expectation that just flipping the calendar from December 31st to January 1st will magically fix their lives.
Exactly. One of the hosts in the source materials states it so plainly. And this quote really hits home. He says, "The year is changing, but many lives are not changing."
And we see that every year, the resolution cycle.
It's the same cycle. We expect a new date to bring new momentum, but the sources argue that without applying these specific proactive keys, you're importing another 12 months of the same habits.
The same deficit.
The same deficit.
So this isn't just about disappointment. This conversation could genuinely save you, the listener, years of trial and error, because the whole foundation of this deep dive is about the mechanics of alignment versus, well, the default setting of exposure.
So let's start with that core premise. What does it actually mean to enter a new year with alignment?
Right.
The sources make a critical distinction here. It's not about just crossing a date on the calendar.
Yeah.
It's crossing with alignment. Think of it less like catching a bus and more like setting your clock perfectly to the central time system before the bus even shows up.
That one distinction changes everything. It shifts the whole approach from passive waiting,
Hoping things get better.
to proactive positioning. It turns preparation into, well, destiny preservation.
And that's the exact language they use. They point to Deuteronomy 31, verse 8, where it says, "The Lord goes before you." That simple statement is their whole definition of alignment. It means you're not rushing ahead of your counsel, but you're not dragging behind either. You're positioned to benefit from the strategy that's already gone before you.
But if that's alignment, then the sources pivot pretty hard to warn us about the danger of spiritual exposure.
They do.
They suggest that years, just the passing of time, naturally expose people if they stay spiritually outdated. And that idea of being outdated, to me, that's incredibly practical.
It is so practical because we all know what an outdated operating system feels like, right?
Totally.
If you're carrying old habits or you neglect your spiritual disciplines, like a faulty firewall, or you leave disobedience unresolved, the new demands of the season will just find the weak spots.
So time itself doesn't punish you.
No, it just reveals where you haven't done the inner work.
It's less like a judge and more like gravity. And that connects right back to that powerful, almost viral quote from the material.
Years do not favor men.
Alignment does.
That is the spiritual gravity of this point. If you're spiritually out of sync, the calendar just gives you a bigger platform for your existing problems. If your prayer life is neglected today, a year from now, that's going to show up as weakness under pressure.
They use this really striking architectural analogy referencing Psalm 127.
Yes, verse 1. Unless the Lord builds the house, labor is wasted.
So if you're working on a building, but the architect isn't the one who gave you the blueprint, you can put in maximum effort.
All the effort in the world. But the outcome is just going to be frustrating futility.
Exactly.
And that analogy perfectly defines misalignment. It's when your direction is missing, which leads to more and more mistakes and eventually exposure.
And they gave us that high-stakes story, the story of Jonah. I think we need to slow down here, because this isn't just a Sunday school story.
Not at all.
Think about the scope of that. One man's private choice to run from his assignment created a literal violent storm that put everyone on that ship in danger.
People who had nothing to do with his initial problem. It shows how connected we are. One person's misalignment can introduce chaos into a whole environment.
And that leads to this crucial point they made about discernment, especially with all the instability we see.
Right. Not all storms that hit us are, external or satanic attacks.
That is a huge misconception, isn't it? The idea that all opposition must be fought or rebuked.
It is. The sources lean really heavily on Hebrews chapter 12, which talks about how God disciplines those he loves.
So some storms are corrective?
Exactly. Sometimes the trouble we're facing isn't the enemy trying to destroy us. It's divine correction trying to redirect us. The key is having the discernment to know, do I rebuke this storm, or do I need to stop and repent in the middle of it? That choice saves months of wasted energy.
That is such actionable context. Okay, so let's move into the keys for 2026, starting with key 1. Divine protection. I mean, given the global instability, this is probably the foundational desire for a lot of people. The sources point to Psalm 91, and they just laser focus on one word: dwelling.
Protection, according to this teaching, begins with dwelling, not just visiting. A tourist visits a city, a resident dwells there.
Okay.
So if you're just a visitor to your faith, a quick prayer here, a service there, you're basically categorized as vulnerable. The sources are blunt. They say prayerless believers and wordless believers are exposed believers. The discipline is the boundary wall.
But wouldn't some listeners argue that's too rigid for the modern world? You know, that this emphasis on discipline kind of runs contrary to the idea of grace.
That's a fair point, but the source material, it addresses that tension head-on. It defines obedience as security, not a chore.
Like a mechanism.
Exactly, like a mechanism.
Yeah.
They reference Exodus 23.22. Obedience activates divine defense. It's non-optional security, like wearing a seatbelt. It's not a moral scoreboard.
And what about that modern tension they noted? The desire for protection without any submission.
They see this as a huge contradiction. You want the result, the covering, without the process of submitting to the principles that grant it. They state it very clearly. Spiritual authority does not protect rebellion.
So protection is tied to alignment.
Fundamentally, you can't ask for a shield while you're ignoring the architect's safety rules.
Which brings us to another huge modern concern they talked about: the battle against fear and just media saturation.
Oh, yeah.
If fear spreads instantly through headlines and social feeds, how are we supposed to maintain that security of dwelling?
This is one of the most practical takeaways. They reference Isaiah 8, verse 12, which tells believers not to fear what the world fears.
Yeah.
But then they offer a practical solution.
Which is?
You have to discipline their exposure.
Discipline their exposure. Wow, that phrase is so relevant today. We are constantly programming our inner lives, aren't we?
That's the exact mechanism they explain. They quote Romans 10.1 thing. Faith comes by hearing. So whether that input is you scrolling through doom and gloom news or focusing on consistent spiritual counsel.
That input is programming your spirit.
It's programming you. If you feed your spirit fear all day, faith just can't grow.
So that directive from Proverbs 4.23, diligently guard your heart, becomes a spiritual defense strategy. It's not just avoiding sin, it's managing your informational diet.
It's closing the door to the noise so you can hear the signal. And when you have that protection and that clear focus, you become distinct. Which transitions us perfectly into the second pillar for 2026.
Key 2, favor that distinguishes. Now, favor is something everyone prays for, but the sources claim a lot of people struggle endlessly even though they ask for it. So why does favor seem to bypass people who are desperate for it?
Because fundamentally, favor isn't a pity response from the divine. It's an amplifier.
An amplifier?
Yeah. The source material claims favor responds to value and alignment, not to desperation. If you're desperate but you haven't built any value, favor has nothing to latch onto to amplify.
So favor finds preparation, it finds character.
Precisely. Look at the examples they gave. Esther didn't just walk into the king's presence. She prepared for a year.
Right.
And Joseph, probably the most favored character, wasn't rewarded for his dreams. He was rewarded because he stayed faithful in Potiphar's house when no one was watching. The preparation in private dictates the favor in public.
And what does that favor look like when it shows up? They use some really beautiful imagery for this.
They do. They reference Psalm 5, verse 12, saying favor surrounds the righteous like a shield. So it acts as both a distinction making you stand out and a defense, deflecting accusations because of the alignment you carry.
Okay, so favor is earned through preparation, but sustaining it, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
What the maintenance factors they highlight?
Humility, wisdom, and integrity. All three are necessary. But the sources gave this really striking warning about pride.
What was it?
They said, pride destroys favor faster than sin sometimes.
That is a fascinating statement. Why would pride be more of an immediate threat than, say, a moral failure?
Because sin might damage your testimony, but pride instantly removes the posture of alignment. Humility is the posture that receives favor. Pride says, I do this myself. and that immediately disconnects you from the source of the favor. It's self-sabotage at the very root.
That is a really powerful perspective. Okay, so if protection is the foundation and favor gives you distinction, let's move to the capstone. Key 3, kingdom overflow.
Right.
This is a concept that gets misunderstood a lot. Usually it just gets boiled down to a prayer for personal financial gain.
And the sources are so careful to clarify the biblical definition. Overflow isn't just having enough for yourself. They define it specifically as supply beyond personal need for kingdom assignment.
So it's capacity for a larger external purpose?
Ex-
I see. So if the supply is beyond your personal need, then that extra resource must be linked directly to more responsibility. It comes back to trust, doesn't it?
Absolutely. They use Luke 12, verse 48, which basically says, much given requires much responsibility. The insight here is that when they counsel you to prepare for overflow, they're really counseling you to develop your character. God increases people. He can trust not to hoard it, but to deploy it.
Which means the capacity for that overflow has to be built first, through character, discipline, knowledge. It's not some unearned windfall.
Right. If you haven't managed the little, you won't be trusted with the abundance. And that leads to the final warning in this section. Overflow without purpose destroys.
Wow.
Without the framework of alignment, excess resource becomes a massive liability. It can amplify your undisciplined habits, which then destroy you faster than any opposition ever could.
So bringing all three keys together, protection, favor, and overflow, it all circles back to this idea of proactive, disciplined alignment. So what are the practical steps? What are believers instructed to do right now to prepare for 2026?
The sources synthesize 4 specific instructions. First, you have to build prayer altars. Establish dedicated times and spaces for consistent communion.
Securing the foundation of your dwelling place.
Exactly. Second, you must develop word discipline. Make sure that consistent, focused input is programming your spirit to counteract all the fear we talked about.
And third was practicing discernment.
Which means slowing down enough to hear the signal over the noise. They reference Habakkuk 2, verse 1, about standing watch to hear God. That requires stillness. You can't rush into a new year blinded by noise and expect alignment.
And finally, there was a huge relational instruction.
Yes, walk in love. They state, bitterness sabotages destiny faster than attacks.
And what's so fascinating there is how they prioritize that. Bitterness is an internal misalignment.
It's an internal time bomb. You could be protecting yourself, gaining favor, receiving overflow. But if you're holding on to unforgiveness inside, that bitterness will destroy the very destiny you're building. Internal sabotage is just more potent than external opposition.
Okay, let's close this deep dive out. To summarize the core themes for you, the sources really emphasize that alignment is a proactive decision. It's rooted in disciplined preparation, not a passive hope that the calendar will change things for you.
Right. Protection, favor, and overflow. They're direct consequences of sustained character, of submission, of consistent obedience.
And as a final bit of counsel, the teachers warned against chasing temporary approval. Their advice was, don't trade depth for popularity. Don't trade truth for applause.
They referenced Matthew 7, defining wise men as those who do the word, the builders with the right blueprint.
Which leaves us with the final, really provocative thought from this council, a challenge for how we all approach the coming season. The claim is this: charisma will not sustain people in coming seasons. Obedience will.
So if we take that statement seriously, charisma won't sustain you, obedience will. We have to ask ourselves a tough question.
And what's that?
What specific area of knowledge or personal discipline right now are you relying on surface appearance, on charisma for, instead of deep, consistent obedience and alignment? That is the question to carry forward as you prepare for the new season.